Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Write your favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Let's get started. What was the fire me, I don't even care moment you had at work? As assistant store manager for a national grocery chain, I was in charge of human resources. They told me to hire more people across the board at $8 an hour in one of the most expensive cities in the US, cut our turnover rate in half because people wouldn't work for us if the McDonald's across the parking lot paid twice as much, and work 80 hours a week without any overtime because, as a manager, you're always on the clock. The district and division HR people were yelling at me all the time, and they wanted me to do everything a normal store manager does. Whenever I was stressed, I would have dreams about working, like having stress dreams about work every night. Because the district managers wouldn't let him, my store manager couldn't take the day off to go to the funeral of his best friend of 40 years. I thought, I'm done with this place when he said that, and I began looking for a way out. As soon as I thought I saw one, I was called in to talk about why I'm not meeting my impossible goals. I met with my district manager and the HR staff from my division. I was constantly asking for help and demanding that they raise pay in the district, which they refused to do. I got written up multiple times for continuing to bring it up after they told me to stop. When I got there, they started grilling me about how I keep failing my goals and being hostile towards the HR staff. Soon, I knew they were just building up to firing me, so I asked the district HR manager for a piece of paper, wrote my resignation on it, and left. Being at that job in that meeting made me feel bad, so I quit with what little pride I still had. They were kidding, though, because I got a letter today from the person in charge of a class action lawsuit that a group of assistant store managers are bringing against the company. We're doing this because even though I worked 50 to 80 hours a week, I never got paid extra, and it looks like none of the other assistant store managers did either. This isn't a firing story, but it does have a twist. There's a new manager after I worked there for more than 2 years. It was hard for me to be assertive or good at sales or dispensing, but I was good at everything else: administration, efficiency, and customer service. She told me I had to leave because I was late a few times and it was a problem. When I tried to serve a customer, she gave the order to another coworker. That coworker wanted me to take care of it, but I threw the glasses on the back table and left. It seemed like she thought I was scary and mean, and the customer was scared. Another person I work with was also shocked that she made a big deal out of it. I was angry, but I had to sign a paper saying that I was young and trusted her. Over the next few weeks, she tried to get me another punishment for being late, and my job was always being watched. My coworker told me to complain to the area manager about how my coworker treated me, and I did. I made a list of all the things she did to me with dates and witnesses. All of a sudden, she started to be nice. When I got in trouble, she ignored everything I did and forgot about her plan for me. Because of my email and the fact that she wasn't making enough sales. The area manager was keeping an eye on her, so she quit her job. I wanted to take a course, but was turned down because there weren't enough teachers. The teacher then went home, and I paid for the course and couldn't get my money back, so I quit. With 2 weeks' notice, I wrote down my resignation and gave it to my coworker. The funny part? The store manager told me this as I was leaving the store for the last time. I was supposed to leave the day before her, but I left the day after her because she was caught stealing baby products and had to be led out of the store. All the security locks were changed. In my old job, one of the head cashiers didn't like me, and she threatened to send me home 3 times in one day, even though she didn't have the power to do so. The manager, who did have that power, stood by me, though. I wasn't even doing a bad thing. She did not like me. I needed a different book than what was at the service desk, and she wouldn't let me get it. That was the first time she threatened me that day. "Since you don't want to work, I guess I'll have to do your job for you," she told the customer. The second time that day, she put me in charge of training someone and also put me on call duty to answer customer service calls. So she was mad at me for saying I'll be happy to train name and be on phone duty. The phone she gave me couldn't do everything I needed it to do. I have to use the online order phone sometimes, though, so I can do everything I need to do on the phone. It's the only one that can park, page, and answer all lines. She wouldn't let me, even though the phone was only a few feet away out of spite. Third time that day, I was training the guy the same way I was trained. I let him do things as they came up and helped him learn the system as new tasks came up. She was mad that I hadn't shown him something that we can't really show well unless we've actually done the task ourselves, which we couldn't do unless a customer asked us to. Do whatever you want to do, I told her as I threw up my hands and walked away the last time she threatened me. I told my boss to keep her away from me so that nothing would happen and we could both do our jobs, and I kept any conversations I had to have with her very short. She lost her job a few months later because she was racist towards another worker. I had to quit because I had to go back to college and couldn't drive to and from work, so I missed seeing it all happen. I worked as an SEO report writer and optimizer for an internet marketing company. Since this was my first job, I didn't know what it meant to start out slowly so you could get better. I was, after all, giving it my all and succeeding. My 4-year girlfriend broke up with me last week, and I took it hard. I slowed down a little because I was a little disorganized. When I told my supervisor this, he said, "All right, let's try not to stay like this for too long." After 3 days, I'm feeling much better and am back to 100%. I need you to do almost all of your coworkers' work because you're better at it than he is, and he's gonna do something else, he tells me over the phone about a week later. Sure, I'll do my best, but I can't make any promises I'll get it all done. I'm currently doing 2 jobs for 2 people at once. After completing 1.5 of the work, I'm called into his office. I allegedly effed him over and slowed down for too long, according to him. So fire me then, I say. You need me, and I'm sick of doing all this extra work. I was let go, though. He calls me 2 weeks later and requests that I return, claims he's unable to complete the task. I respond with, good, maybe you won't treat your employees like S next time. Went out of business like a month later. What is your narrative about the HOA or neighbors from H? We had the worst neighbors ever. In no way did they keep an eye on their children. The 2 older children, who were probably 5 and 3 years old at the time, would visit our yard and get into all kinds of mischief. When I caught them, they were destroying gardens, throwing a bunch of mud into a small pond that we had, and other things. At one point, the ice cream truck stopped by our cul-de-sac, and I witnessed them rushing out of the house while carrying their mother's purse and throwing things out of it in order to get the money. One more time, I was at home by myself and decided to take a shower. The deck door can be left unlocked during the day in our neighborhood, which is one of the few places where this is generally acceptable. As I emerged from the shower and made my way downstairs, I discovered the children sitting in our family room watching television. When I informed them that they were required to leave, they responded by saying, "You're not my father. You have no right to tell me what to do." I then escorted them out of the house. When it came to being a nightmare, their parents were just as bad, if not worse. My younger sister once went to their house to play with the children, and while she was there, she accidentally put a sucker in her mouth. After hearing that one of the children desired it, the mother took it out of my sister's mouth and handed it to the child who had expressed interest in it. During that time, they were constructing their home. They instructed the builders to obtain water from the hose spigot that we had. My mother had the impression that it would be a one-time event that would only require 1 bucket. However, it appears that the homeowners instructed them to continue using our water supply. It was the worst thing that could have happened when they decided to disrupt our property. They demolished a forest in order to construct their house, and as a result, the flow of the storm drain was altered, which resulted in a tree falling and coming dangerously close to hitting their house while it was being constructed. When we informed them of what was going on, they responded by saying, "Yeah, no problem, we'll take care of it," which is cool. However, the situation was not really their problem. We went on vacation with our family, and when we returned home a week later, we discovered that a berm had been constructed on our property. They waited until they knew we were going to be gone before they hired some guys to build the berm, lied about their property, and then built it. I'm aware that the flow of stormwater in the yard was not really their problem, but they did it anyway. My mother and father confronted them about it, and they responded by saying that there was nothing wrong with what they did and that we ought to move on with our lives. The day that they moved was a brilliant day for them. There was a neighbor who was trying to sell his house a few years ago, and we live in a neighborhood that is managed by an HOA. I kept my trash cans by my garage. They did not appear to be shabby or smelly. Rather, they appeared to be brand new, and once I returned home, I discovered that they'd been taken away. They were hiding behind my fence and my lawn, which I discovered after looking around. The fact that this occurred 3 times in a week caused me to become enraged, and I began to believe that someone was trying to F with me. After going to the hardware store, I purchased the largest chain and padlock that I could find, and I immediately began chaining them to the post that's located on my front porch frame. My neighbor's outside, and I say to him, "Hey Craig, you wouldn't happen to know what keeps happening to my trash cans, would you?" It would appear that he went through the HOA rulebook and discovered that they're required to be out of sight except on the day that they're to be thrown away. He believed that the fact that my trash cans were visible was the reason he was having such a difficult time selling his ridiculously overpriced house in a market that was falling apart, and he was moving them himself. The HOA never communicated with me, and I never received a notice from them. I scolded him and told him he was an effing child who, at over 40 years old, should know better than to keep coming onto my property and effing with my stuff without my knowledge. I don't care if they're trash cans or not. It's my belongings, my land, my fence, and my lawn. There's a special ed boy and a crazy lady. In the time that we were purchasing our first house, they were our neighbors. Despite the fact that we'd been warned about her by the other neighbors, he was fine but not very bright. We did not have a real run-in with her for approximately 3 years. Immediately following the birth of our eldest daughter, we made the decision to construct a chain-link fence around the backyard in order to provide a secure environment for both her and the dog to play in. She had leveled her backyard before we moved in, which was a significant improvement because all the backyards on our side of the street sloped into a downward direction. To ensure that we were aware of the appropriate placement of the fence posts, we made sure to have one of the other neighbors, who was a licensed surveyor, locate the property lines and the stakes that had been set up during the plotting process of the neighborhood. It was a pleasant surprise to see that crazy lady's leveled backyard extended onto our property by approximately 2 feet. This marked the beginning of the slope that led from her leveled yard to ours. Because we were digging on her property and ruining her nicely manicured and leveled lawn, she immediately threw a fit. She was upset because we were disrespecting her property. In addition to demonstrating the stakes and the boundary of the property, we also informed her that we were repositioning the fence 1 foot away from the actual boundary. She was not going to have any of it. In the end, we decided to take her to court in order to obtain a restraining order which would prevent her from constructing a fence on our property. In addition to being given a temporary one, we were also instructed to give her a week to conduct the survey of the property lines on her own responsibility. 5 days later, we received a letter from her stating that she was very satisfied with the results of the survey, which showed exactly the same line as ours had, and we proceeded to, in late October in Minnesota, hurry up and finish the stretch of fence abutting her property. I gained a newfound appreciation for the 2 neighbors who lived adjacent to the back of her property and who, in order to avoid having to interact with her, constructed a wooden fence that was 8 feet tall and planted arbor vitae that was 15 feet tall. She also attempted to file a lawsuit against them for obstructing her breeze. A few years later, we decided to leave the house. Any disability benefits that she's been receiving during that period were terminated at some point after that, and the entire property was a complete and utter disaster. And the boy from special ed also abandoned her. Thank you for listening to these stories. If you want to see new videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the like button.